The emergency dispatcher had answered hundreds of calls that week: fires, medical crises, burglaries, even false alarms. She had grown used to the rhythm of voices filled with panic or desperation, but this one was different. When she picked up, the phone line crackled, and on the other end came a voice so small, so frightened, it made her pause. It was a little girl. Her words were trembling, broken by tears. "Please, please help. They're trying to hurt him. They're saying he doesn't belong here. They have sticks. Please. He didn't do anything. He's just hungry. Please don't let him hurt him." The dispatcher straightened. "Sweetheart, slow down. Who are they hurting?" "My dog," she sobbed. "They're chasing him. He's scared. He didn't bite anyone, I promise. If you don't come, he might not survive." The dispatcher's fingers flew across the keyboard. She pulled up the address, typed in the highest priority code, and radioed it out. Within seconds, a unit was assigned. Officer James Miller, along with his canine partner, Rex. James was no stranger to urgent calls. In his years on the force, he had seen fires, break-ins, and tragedies that stayed with him long after his shift ended. But something about this call struck him differently. Maybe it was the innocence in the child's voice. Maybe it was the raw, desperate love she carried for a dog nobody else seemed to care about. Whatever it was, James felt it in his chest. He flicked on the sirens. The squad car roared through the quiet neighborhood streets, red and blue lights reflecting against the windows of sleeping houses. Beside him, Rex, his loyal German shepherd partner, sat tall, ears perked, eyes sharp. Rex had been through countless missions, but somehow dogs always knew when something important was about to happen. When they pulled onto the block, James saw the commotion instantly. At the far end of the street, under the dim glow of a flickering streetlight, two grown men had cornered a scrawny, mud-caked German shepherd mix against a wooden fence. Each man gripped a long stick, swinging it through the air to frighten the animal. The poor dog cowered low, trembling, his body pressed so tightly to the fence it looked as though he wished he could disappear into the wood itself. A few feet away stood the girl. No older than 8, her tiny frame was shaking with sobs. Her sweatshirt, once pink, was streaked with dirt and tears. Her fists were balled at her sides as she cried out, begging them to stop. Her voice was raw, breaking, but she refused to leave. James' instincts surged. He flung open his door, his voice cutting sharp through the night. "Police! Drop the sticks!" At the same moment, Rex leapt down from the car, his bark booming like thunder. The deep, commanding growl of a trained canine shattered the night air. The two men startled, stepping back. Their false bravado drained away, and without a word, they turned and hurried into the shadows, leaving the dog behind. The girl rushed toward James, her small hands pointing frantically at the corner. "That's him! That's Max! Please, don't let anyone hurt him!" James approached carefully. Up close, the dog was in heartbreaking condition. His fur was dirty and patchy, clumps missing. His ribs jutted out, his body frail from hunger. His eyes, deep brown pools, were wide with fear. He pressed against the fence as though trying to melt into the wood itself. James had seen neglected animals before, but there was something about this dog, something about the way he trembled yet kept glancing at the little girl that struck him. And then something remarkable happened. The girl, tears still rolling down her cheeks, dropped to her knees a few feet from the dog. She stretched out her hand, not demanding, not rushing, just offering. Her voice, though quivering, softened. "It's okay, Max. I promised I'd protect you. I'm here. No one's going to hurt you now." For a long moment, the dog didn't move. His body trembled, his paws dug into the dirt. But then, slowly, hesitantly, he shifted forward. Inch by inch, he closed the distance until his nose brushed her tiny fingers. And then, against all odds, he licked her hand. His tail wagged once, weak, fragile, but filled with trust. James felt his throat tighten. It was moments like this that reminded him why he had chosen this work. Carefully, he crouched, pulling a spare leash from his belt. He slid it gently over the dog's neck. To his relief, the dog didn't resist. Instead, he leaned toward the girl, pressing his muzzle against her cheek as she wrapped her arms around him. James exhaled softly. He's safe now. No one's going to hurt him again. The little girl's tears turned into a smile brighter than any flashing light. Later, back at the precinct, the story unfolded. The dog, named Max, had once belonged to a family in the area, but when they moved away months earlier, they hadn't taken him. They had left him behind, a forgotten creature to wander the streets. Max had survived by scavenging scraps, drinking from gutters, sleeping under porches. But Sophie, the girl, had found him. She had started leaving pieces of her lunch near the alley, bits of bread or meat wrapped in napkins. Slowly, week by week, Max began to trust her. He wagged his tail whenever she appeared. He waited for her after school, even when the rest of the neighborhood only saw him as a nuisance, a stray better off gone. Not everyone shared Sophie's kindness. Some neighbors complained. They said stray dogs were dangerous, that he might bite. Others shooed him away with harsh words. And then, that very night, those men had gone too far. If Sophie hadn't called, Max might have vanished, or worse. The next morning, James checked on Max in the small shelter connected to the station. He had been washed, his wounds treated. His coat was still thin, but his body already looked less fragile. Yet there was sadness in his eyes, the kind of sadness that comes from being unwanted. Then Sophie arrived. Her backpack was nearly as big as she was, bouncing on her shoulders as she hurried in. The moment Max saw her, his entire being lit up. His tail wagged so hard it rattled the kennel. He whined, pawed, begged until the door opened, and then he nearly bowled Sophie over, covering her face with licks. She laughed, hugging him tightly, whispering that she had kept her promise. James smiled. In his years on the force, he had seen humanity at its worst. But here, in this simple, unshakable bond between a child and a dog, he saw something pure. Still, reality loomed. Max couldn't stay in the shelter forever. There were rules, paperwork, and neighborhood complaints. Sophie's parents were hesitant, too. They loved their daughter, but they struggled already. A dog meant food, vet bills, responsibilities they weren't sure they could afford. One evening, James visited their small home. Sophie's mother listened carefully, arms folded. "Officer," she said gently, "we're not against dogs, but we barely manage as it is. How can we add another mouth to feed?" Sophie, standing in the doorway, heard every word. Her eyes filled with tears. She rushed forward, clinging to Max's collar. Her voice broke as she pleaded. "Please, Mom, if we send him away, he'll think I lied. I told him I'd never let anyone hurt him again." Her mother's expression softened. For the first time, she truly saw what Max meant to her daughter. James explained that the shelter had programs, food assistance, low-cost vet care that could ease the burden. He said it would only work if the whole family agreed. There was a long silence. Then Sophie's father, who had been quiet, finally spoke. He looked at his daughter, then at the dog pressed faithfully against her side. If Max means this much to her, maybe it's worth it. That week, the adoption papers were signed. Max was no longer a stray. He was Sophie's dog. The first night in her room, he curled at the foot of her bed. The house was dark, the world finally quiet. Sophie leaned down, whispering into his ear, "You're safe now, Max, forever." And for the first time in months, maybe years, the dog slept deeply, without fear. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood. The same people who once dismissed him as a problem began to notice the way he walked proudly beside Sophie. They saw him sit patiently at the gate as she played, standing guard as though the yard was his kingdom. They noticed how he looked at her with loyalty so fierce that it could not be mistaken. The men who had once chased him stayed away. Fear was replaced with something new, respect. And then came the day Max proved himself. It was a warm evening. Sophie was playing near the street, laughing as she skipped along the edge of the sidewalk. A car turned the corner too fast, tires screeching as it barreled down the road. Sophie didn't see it, but Max did. With the speed of lightning, he lunged. His body struck hers, knocking her out of the car's path just as it whipped past, horn blaring, disappearing into the distance. Sophie sat on the curb, shaken, tears brimming. Max stood in front of her, body rigid, growling low as eyes locked on the place where danger had vanished. Her parents rushed outside, their faces pale. They gathered Sophie in their arms, then turned to Max, realizing in that moment what he truly was. Not just a dog, not just a pet, but family, a guardian, a hero. From that day forward, nobody doubted him again. He was no longer just a stray. He was no longer unwanted. He was the dog a little girl had saved with one brave phone call. And in return, he had saved her too. Some stories remind us that love and loyalty can change everything. If you believe every life deserves a chance, make sure to subscribe and stay with us for more real emotional stories that inspire and heal.